We were finally introduced to the god of darkness and shadows in Knull in The Last Dance. But what information did we learn from him? And how was The Last Dance actually a perfect introduction for the character? The age of the Marvel Universe and the modern multiverse as we know it is divided into eons known as the cosmos, where the first cosmos was one lone reality at the dawn of existence. With each new cosmos though, reality has shifted, and different societies evolve in different ways. But one of the most important details of these eons is that they didn't spontaneously occur back to back. In between each age of the cosmos, the Celestials took notes that they had collected about their last experiments, and they worked to design a better multiverse. Each age of the multiverse gives the Celestials more and more insight into the complexities of managing life as we know it. And so when they create the next iteration of the cosmos, it is more nuanced and complex. This means that there is a gap in between each of these eons, a void of eternal darkness where nothing can live nor exist. Nothing except for one entity who calls this domain his home. Before the 7th cosmos was constructed, this period of nigh unlimited darkness was the home of Knull, the symbiote god. So today, let's take a deeper dive into the history of Knull, the story of his life, how he was imprisoned by his own creations, and how this seems to have been adapted following the events of The Last Dance. Spoilers will lie ahead for Venom 3. In The Last Dance, the void that Knull calls home is described as existing beyond the edge of reality as we know it. The implication is that the Sony universe has this horizon in which everything in this reality occurs, assuming that the Big Bang happened in the same way in this reality. This would mean that Knull comes from the space that light has not yet touched, almost 14 billion light years in any given direction. This is the point where light projected from the Big Bang is only just now reaching. But by Marvel terms, we may be able to see it even further than this. This description may be referring to the space between universes within the multiverse itself, such as the void where the Citadel at the end of time can be located, or where the TVA has made their base of operations. If this is the case, then this would imply that Knull is in fact an entity from beyond the multiverse, and could have very well existed before this multiverse spawned into existence. The idea that he was around before this multiverse is pulled directly from the comics, and if this interpretation is correct, then this would mean that this piece of lore is intact. While in this void, Knull was content, and only wanted to drift across the darkness in ultimate peace. He had his kingdom, and this is all he could ever want. When the Celestials arrived though, and finished their design for the 7th cosmos, they began their construction. Even though Knull is depicted as an ancient evil of unrivaled malice, who wants nothing more than to murder everyone in existence, Knull's entire motivation is that his neighbors essentially began doing loud construction work without asking him first. They offered him a place as the King in Black though, which he rejected, but in Venom, this is the title that he seems to wear with pride, indicating that this was either a title that he gave himself, or that it came from somewhere aside from the Celestials. The King in Black is a role in which an individual would operate within the multiverse, policing it as the antithesis to the Beyonders, whose territory was observing the multiverse from the outside. Knull, however, was beholden to no one, and so he attacked the Celestials with the power of the living abyss, the primordial, inky black tendrils of darkness that made up the space between multiverses. With a crude, unrefined blade, he was able to decapitate one of the Celestials, carving a forge into the remains of its head. While the Celestial has never been properly identified, this is the same head that would end up becoming Nowhere, but Knull was not done here yet. He used the essence of the Celestial to temper a blade that he called the all-black Necrosword, a living weapon designed to fold and bend into different forms at will. This blade was armed with only the barest of sentience, enough to feel and have desires, but not enough to be considered a living entity. And it was from this template that Knull would create what we know as the symbiotes, the Clintar. But the symbiotes became more curious and open-minded. Knull made sure that the planet he built for them was completely isolated from everything else in the cosmos intentionally. He sheltered his children, kept them locked away in an environment where his word was law. And when they began to explore, they began to adopt traits from other organisms from around the universe, including traits such as honesty, nobility, honor, and integrity. They learned how to care about not just themselves, but the others that surrounded them, and they finally began to understand what it meant to be alive. Their master, however, was enraged that they would even think differently than him, let alone try to advocate different views, and so a war broke out between Knull and his symbiote children. The symbiotes eventually overthrew Knull though, locked him away in the depths of their homeworld. And in doing this, they adopted their word for cage as the name for both their home planet and their species, the Clintar. This is where we see Knull in The Last Dance, having been locked away by the symbiotes and left to rot. But what this proves, however, is that there is only one reason why the Clintar imprisoned someone as vile as Knull. That is because they could not kill him. Knull stands against every force of life in the universe, including the symbiotes that turn against him, and there is simply no good reason why the Clintar would ever keep someone like Knull alive. The Celestials couldn't kill Knull either, and so it seems that holding him in captivity is the best that anyone can do. This explains why Venom is so fearful of him in The Last Dance. This is where the story begins to break away from the comics, however, as we learn that the cinematic version of Knull was also the one that created the Xenophages. This is something that we theorized about before the movie came out, but was not officially confirmed until we saw it recently. This helps us to understand more about the character of Knull in this depiction. What's interesting about this is that when we meet Knull, his hands are bound to the Necrosword, implying that he is unable to use them. Even though Knull has a wide variety of cosmic abilities, he is typically shown crafting items and tools with his hands in a physical forge. He doesn't will items into existence or create them using magic. Knull is a blacksmith, and he creates his armada with a hammer and an anvil just like Tony Stark did. If his hands are bound, he likely is unable to create anything new, and the Clintar did this to him. If this is true, then he likely would have needed these to create the Xenophages before he was overthrown, which speaks to the possibility of a much larger war happening on Clintar than we see in the movie. Since the Xenophages were specifically designed to be symbiote hunters, then it means that Knull was already trying to kill off his offspring before they succeeded in imprisoning him. So there would have been an all-out war between the symbiotes and the Xenophages at some point in the past. We don't know the fallout of this war though, or how many symbiotes had to die in order to lock Knull away, but what we do know is just how difficult the Xenophages are to kill. At the end of The Last Dance, we see that it took several symbiotes to even slow one down. And even then, the monster kept reconstituting itself after being shredded apart in every conceivable way. There was nothing that any of the symbiotes could do long term that would stall the beast in order to cover Venom's escape. And the Xenophage systematically worked its way through each and every one of the symbiote allies. They were only able to be destroyed when Venom trapped them and melted them away with a hyper-destructive acid. But this solution was purely situational. Had the fight taken place anywhere else, this would have not been an option. Just one Xenophage could annihilate more than half a dozen symbiotes. So seeing how the symbiotes were able to overcome a force this powerful in the distant past would be a fascinating concept to see in the future. This would also explain why Venom knows about the Xenophages, and why other symbiotes seem to have fled the world of Clintar. But in the comics, the Xenophages are their own race of entities that were not created by Knull. They were not created or designed with the deliberate intention of being symbiote hunters. In the comics, they were simply compatible with the symbiotes, and fell in line as their natural predators. With Spider-Man 4, we will likely see the return of Knull, despite Kevin Feige saying before that Spider-Man 4 would be a more grounded story, but the ground will be on an alien planet in another universe, which seems to all but confirm that Spider-Man 4 will take place on Battleworld. But for Knull and the Void, it seems like it's going to be created after Doomsday, and this is exactly what Knull has been looking out for. Everything that he had fought so hard against the Celestials to keep, and everything that he's been clawing his way back towards reclaiming as the King in All Black. After Doomsday, the only sliver of life left in the multiverse will be Battleworld. And so once Battleworld is destroyed, Knull will have his domain back completely to himself, without anyone to bother him ever again. This means that Spider-Man 4 will likely see Peter Parker coming into contact with the god of the symbiotes, the godfather of the Clintar, and the King in Black. If the entire population of Clintar could not kill Knull, and neither could the Celestials, then we are left to wonder what a kid from Queens can do against the primordial god of living darkness. But guys, what did you think of Knull in The Last Dance? And do you think that he will be the villain of Spider-Man 4 set on Battleworld? As always, my friends, Hulk smash that subscribe button for more, and have a great day.